An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? Your stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 135. I'm Aaron Pollier.
And I'm Darlene.
Since this is a episode of 5 or 10s, we decided that we were going to do a classic, and we realized that we had not actually ended up watching, previously to this, The Mummy from 1932. So this is the original Mummy. Darlene, have you seen this one before? Do you remember?
Yes, I have.
Okay, you have seen. Do you have any memories about it then?
Not too much. I just remember Karloff's eyes.
Yeah.
And I do remember her being the main girl in this, being in that Cleopatra-like outfit.
Character's name is Helen Grosvenor. Grosvenor? Yeah. I've seen this before, obviously, but I will say before we even start that there's only a couple memorable things in this. And because those couple things are memorable, they have stuck in my head about being something that I've seen many times before. But everything else about this movie is so, I don't want to say bland, but it's so kind of.
No, her name is Zat Hawaii.
Yes, the character's name, as I said, was Helen Grosvenor.
Oh.
That everything just kind of blends into other Universal horror movies. So we're going to do some behind-the-scenes stuff first here. Obviously, Boris Karloff is in this. He's high off his fame from Frankenstein. He is clearly a well-regarded actor, even by Frankenstein's time, but his cachet has really grown. Let's put it that way.
He's heavily make-upped in this one again.
Very heavily make-up, but he has lines. Many lines, in fact. He actually has a pretty big speaking role in this, even though he's fairly heavily made up, at least in the beginning. Later on, when he's just playing that other character, when he's playing his more human self, I guess.
Imhotep?
Imhotep, yeah. Imhotep.
And not the mummy. The other name for him was...
Imhotep. Imhotep, that's the way...
Imhotep was the... person way before.
Yeah, but that's who he
our
is.
Death Bay is the other name he gives himself.
Which is like Death from Ra or something like that. It's an anagram for that. This movie's weird. And the reason I'm going to say that is because the director is a guy named Karl Freund. And there is a ton of rumor associated with this movie, more so than the other Universal horror movies of this time, in that Karl Freund, I guess, rumor has it that he wasn't a very competent director. Like, most of his stuff was actually being the cinematographer rather than a director of a film, okay? So, is this his first film that he directed? No, but I think it's his first kind of big budget one.
Dracula is uncredited.
Yeah, he probably helped with Dracula. So one of the rumors that was spread was from Rita Johann, who plays Helen Grosvenor. Okay, I'm just going to call her Helen. She's just going to be Helen. One of the rumors said that the director was very concerned that the movie was going to fail, and he was the kind of guy that liked pinning it on other people and started trying to pin Zita being the problem child of the picture even before it began. And she somehow realized this and took it completely in stride and decided to F with him back. And so there was like a dinner right before filming began. And supposedly the director, Carl, tells her, okay, look, we're going to need you to do a whole scene topless. And now at the time, this is pre-code. And there are many films where actresses actually were completely topless. It was never for sexual reasons. It was always artistic in a way. Like, hey, I'm here's a Roman or Greek woman, and they're topless, or whatever. I'm sure it's there as titillation as well, of course. But this is a talkie, and it's clearly a monster movie. So there's some implication that there's going to be some shenanigans going on. And he says, look, it's not in your contract, but I'm going to need you to do this. And she just smiled, thinking, yeah, he's not going to have me do this, because this would never get past the regular censors. Because I'm not playing a Greek goddess, I'm not playing something artistic, even though she is sort of playing a reincarnation of an ancient Egyptian princess, they're not going to let go the fact if I'm topless. And she knew this, like, immediately. So she just she says that she smiled at him and said, of course, darling, as long as you keep me warm, I'll do whatever you want. And completely called his bluff. And he tried to make her life miserable because of that on this movie. Does it come across in the movie? Not really. I think her part is kind of pointless and droll, but she doesn't seem miserable in the movie, even though I know there's points where she is made that way.
Her part is not pointless.
Is it? I mean, what does she do in the movie? I mean, there is a point to it at the end. I guess, fine. Yes, at the end. Go ahead and say what you're going to say about her.
It's not pointless. She's one of the main characters that are driving.
Yes, you are correct, but I will also say that
she's got more point than Frank Wimple or whatever his name.
The Wemples?
Yes.
Darlene, are there any characters that truly are characters in this?
No,
not even the mummy. And here's what's weird. Here's what else I'm going to say before we even go into the plot.
I still haven't given my spiel.
Okay, well, you can give your spiel in a second, Darlene. The one, if you notice, Darlene, this is a retelling of Dracula. This is almost the exact same plot as Dracula from the year before. A being is found in Egypt. He comes to England. Okay? He comes to England.
They don't come to England.
I know, it doesn't matter. Cairo. But the creature goes to the British Museum. The mummy goes to the British Museum, right? There's a guy who's in love with the love interest that Dracula is then trying to control and turn into his minion. I mean, the mummy trying to turn into his minion because she's an old love. They're immortal through some sort of curse, etc., etc., etc.
But every story actually can, if you go by Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens.
Every story's been told.
There's only two.
I would almost want to argue that plot beat by plot beat, scene for scene, this is a remake.
It's not as bad as Aragon versus
Star Wars. A New Hope, which is just a almost scene for scene retelling. But that was embarrassing sitting in the theater. We were there on opening night. Weekend, yeah.
One of our friends that went with us is a Star Wars fan.
He was the first one to catch it.
And he kept on narrating over top of Aragon, the Star Wars new.
And then I joined in. And people around us weren't angry. They were just completely shocked.
The man in front of us was.
Yeah, but everybody else was like shocked that they hadn't realized it. And we just kept going. He had brought his
grandson or something
like
that.
The next scene's going to be this because this is Star Wars. We're going to see Uncle Owen and Aunt Faru burned. I wonder what's going to happen. And then, something very similar happens. Anyway, go with your spiel about the background of this movie.
Well, it was... put out on December 22nd, 1932.
Sure.
So it's a late one.
Sure.
The budget was $196,000.
Pretty good amount of money.
It's 73 minutes long.
So it's not offensively long.
And I didn't have all the other jazz because it doesn't.
A lot of the stuff about this movie is rumor.
Yes.
A lot of it is rumor. I'm willing to buy the fact that this director was kind of a dick to Zita Johann.
And it probably did cause some things on the.
Well, supposedly her princess costume later on was so delicate that the director refused to let her be able to sit and leaned her against a wall so that the costume wouldn't crease improperly. Like, seriously, some really effed up stuff.
I will give it that
Costume's
the
good.
costume's good. The setting is good.
Yeah, well, we'll get into what works and what doesn't because
I want to just say what works right now because you're going to ask me and I'm going to freeze up.
okay, so what works? The sets.
The sets I liked. I actually liked the makeup that they put
Oh yes,
Karloff in.
Oh yes,
Um,
Karloff is properly used in this movie.
I like her outfit.
Yes. I completely agree. The makeup on Karloff is stunning.
Now I don't know how she wore that stuff in Egypt though.
She didn't because this is the 1930s.
I know, but the first thing that you'd think of is you think of somebody like what's the artist that does mystery? She was in Egypt.
What, Agatha Christie?
Agatha Christie. You think about her, and you there's outfits that they have of her
Sure.
Egyptian stuff, and she's not dressed.
Okay. That's all I can really say that works. I agree with you. The sets, the costuming. And Boris Karloff overall, he actually is properly used in this movie.
When you see his shadow of his eyebrows, where he tilts his head down and looks up,
Yes.
that is the iconic look that Boris is known for. The chin down, looking up over his eyebrows, his
Mhm.
brow, his heavy brow,
Mm-hmm.
his forehead. And that's in some other movies
Well,
too.
and
And
they-
it's
they put-
iconic for him.
They put the Kirk light on his eyes,
And
too.
they did that. And he gives that one, and it makes you
It's fantastic. It's a reused shot throughout this film, but it worked really, really well. And that is all I will say works in this movie.
but there's other movies that they do that for him
Sure.
on.
Sure, but I'm saying, like, as somebody might go, "Oh, Aaron, what the hell are you talking about? The Mummy is such a classic." Oh, and I love the movie poster. The movie poster is fantastic. But since this to me feels like a retelling of Dracula, just reskinned with ancient Egyptian stuff, and it is 73 minutes long, and to me, it felt like it was 2 hours long.
Well, there was a lot of. Did you really need to have the two different
Wemples?
Wimples?
No, not really.
Did you have to have in 1921 an expedition finds a mummy of the high priest named Imhotep,
Imhotep, Darlene.
and he was executed and mummified alive? That's what started.
Well, here's the thing. Again, with rumors about this movie, we haven't even gotten into the plot. The plot is Dracula. But that supposedly there were tons of scenes filmed for this movie that never made it into the cut that would have actually expanded the story out to show, like, the previous lives of Zita Johann's character Helen, and seeing her, like, seeking out Imhotep throughout the ages.
Yeah, that was one of the bad things.
But they don't show any of it. Why is it bad?
Telephone, the TV looking thing.
Oh,
It's
the
supposed to be-
television scrying device. That's what it looks like.
It's
television.
actually a pool or a bath.
Yeah, it's a scrying pool. So it has like a black bottom to it or something like that.
But
yeah.
when they use it and they put it up on the screen, it looks like a TV set.
Sure. That's what it looks like. I said, look, view screen on. That's what I think I said when we were watching it.
Do you want me to keep going with the plot?
Because like seriously, this movie, it's weird because I want to love it. I really want to love it, but I don't.
The mummy is buried. When he's buried, he is also buried with a box that has a curse on it.
Does it have a curse?
Huh?
They say it has a curse. It doesn't. There's no curse on it. They constantly refer to a curse on the box. There is no curse. Remember how everybody dies in this? How everyone that does die, that deals with that box, how they actually die? It's not because of the box.
It's because of reading that scroll.
It's because of reading the scroll and then Imhotep actually like killing them psychically. It has nothing to do with the box.
So this is a lot of magic that goes on.
Yeah, there's a lot of magic. There's no real explanation for Imhotep suddenly going from like a dried up corpse to being like a halfway human looking person.
But the young assistant to the Sir Joseph Wimple,
Yeah.
he goes insane after trying to read it. He's the one that cracks up laughing.
No, he doesn't go insane reading it. See, that's again, like I was so frustrated with this movie, and I maybe it was because I was actually paying attention. Like, he doesn't go crazy from reading the scroll. There's nothing weird with that scroll. He goes crazy from seeing Imhotep rise from the crypt. But they don't explain that. They just show it. Like, he's fine reading it. It's when he sees the mummy take the scroll is when he starts cracking up. Because the scroll itself is just literally a magic spell to raise the dead. That's it.
Make the dead live forever.
Now, mind you, here's the other funny thing. Imhotep is mummified alive in this movie for taking and stealing this scroll originally.
Because he was going to
raise the princess. Right?
Raise the princess. And his father, the Pharaoh, punished him.
And buried the scroll that he wanted with him.
So it wouldn't happen again.
But gave him eternal life so it would happen again. I hate... No, seriously, it's Dracula, but if it was told poorly.
Then we go to actually 11 years later, because one was...
It's a different British expedition.
1921, and the next one is 1832.
1932, Darlene.
1932. Sorry, 1921 to 1932.
And we have different Wemples. There's like the elder Wemple that is at the first dig that he's like given a knighthood.
He won't come back to the desert.
Yeah, but then he comes back because his son is on this expedition, and his son says...
he won't. He was in Cairo at the time. He wouldn't go into the desert.
But he did go into the desert when his son asked him to come out there to check out what he had. I know. See, I agree with what you're saying. It's just that they tend not to go with what they're saying. Like, oh, there's a curse on the box. No, there isn't. It's Imhotep killing everybody. He doesn't want to ever go out to the desert, but he does.
The mummy as Artadath Bey shows to the guys where to dig to find the tomb of Princess, whatever her name is.
Princess Vespa. Doesn't
and
matter.
They find it, and it gets the Cairo Museum takes the findings. It also makes Frank Wimple angry because he was digging this up for the British Museum.
Oh, yeah. And here we have the most unrealistic part of this movie. The Brits actually don't steal Egyptian artifacts. They let the Egyptian government keep them. I found that incredibly unrealistic. How many Egyptian artifacts did we see in the British Museum in London, Darlene? A lot.
How much of the...
Well, the Parthenon's there, too.
Yeah, but the Parthenon probably would have been destroyed.
Parthenon was destroyed.
During the Greek Civil War.
it was blown up, and then the British picked up the pieces and brought it back to the British Museum. The point is that it was unrealistic that the British would have let all that stuff stay, because again, this is based on the finding of like Tutankhamun's crypt.
Yes.
All right. Anyway, keep going, Darlene. Yeah, this movie frustrates me. Do we need to have beer for this? You know, here's the thing. It's not that bad of a movie. It's just that it's frustrating because it's what, an hour and 12 minutes long or whatever the hell. And you don't need to look it up exactly.
73 minutes.
Hour and 13 minutes, I'm sorry. And it just drags and drags and drags, and
because I don't know what the next scene is, because I just let it.
Okay, let me go here. Let me find this. Okay, so the princess is named Ankh S.N. Amen from 1730. We're introduced to Helen, who is the daughter of the governor of Sudan.
Yeah.
Yeah, governor of Sudan, that's right. And she's just kind of hanging out in Cairo.
She's half Egyptian.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. And I guess like somebody in her past, like, see, here's they muddy the issue here. Oh, she's half Egyptian, but she's also the reincarnation of this old princess. But they try to make it all about her just being a reincarnation rather than just being... You could have said, oh, she's half Egyptian and she's of the bloodline or something like that, rather than reincarnated. But I guess it's like a double whammy for Imhotep in this. The museum's going to be kept open all night in the honor of Imhotep because he helped find this big find now.
Yes, they allowed him to stay the whole night. And what does he do? He steals the
scroll.
Scroll.
Right? Oh, and the Elder Wemple has another great quote that I laughed out loud about. He says, "The British Museum works for science, not loot." I that cracked me up. That's where I walked out of the room for a bit just laughing, because that's F you. You know, like, I wish that was the case, but this is 1930s British Museum.
Is this a British or American?
It's British. They have British Union
So they're
Jacks.
trying to, like...
They even say on, like, 1932 Egyptian archaeological dig ran by the British Museum. Like, there's signs for it.
No, I'm saying, is the film...
Oh, it's American. It's an American film. It's Universal. Are they trying to be ironic? I don't know.
I'm saying, are they trying to do whitewashing?
I don't know, because the American government doesn't have a very good track record with that crap either.
They're American government is really good at whitewashing.
Well, I'm just saying, like, this is the British at this point have a track record of cultural theft. Don't get me wrong. I love the UK. I love visiting the UK.
But some of it would have been lost.
Yes.
Hell, look at what happened to the big Buddha statues.
It's just
because of terrorism.
It's just that it just felt very ironic, is what I'm saying. Whenever they talked about
yes,
Imhotep chants and Helen hears his voice remotely. It's kind of like Dracula calling out to what's her name, and I'm not even remember, because I haven't even thought about it in a little while. And she ends up walking out of the dance in a haze. She arrives at the museum and can't enter, and then the Wemples see her, like, trying to get into the museum, saying, "I must kill Nordberg," and she just can't get in through the door. So she passes out, and they take her back to their place. And so she's on a Victorian era fainting couch for like most of the rest of the movie. She's talking in her sleep, like moaning Imhotep over and over again.
She actually was from what one of them said, she was speaking a language that hadn't been spoken for 3,000 years.
And again,
and I gotta say,
like, how do you know what it sounds like?
I kind of laughed about this one because that language isn't spoken. We don't have any spoken record of it.
How would you know that's a language that hasn't been spoken when you don't know that language?
Yes, but Egyptian is known that we don't know how to pronounce it.
Some of it.
That's why in Stargate they made
Darlene, it depends on the dynasty. It depends on the period of time of Egypt, because there's like more recent old Egyptian that we do know. But I agree, there's differences in translation of different hieroglyphics depending. And this is the 1930s. We already have the Rosetta Stone. We know what these words mean.
Yeah, I know that. But what I'm saying is that even in Stargate, they were correct about this fact that it hadn't been spoken, so you could have not be speaking it, even though you know what it says.
So somebody comes to pick Helen up because I guess they just know where Helen is. They have like a dog collar on her that tracks her remotely somehow. I'm sure that there's somebody that was left behind at, like, they sent somebody to the dance to tell whoever was there looking for Helen that, hey, we have
so
Helen.
Her father comes.
Yeah. Well, no, it's Dr. Miller. It's not her father.
Oh.
It's Dr. Miller, because is her father ever actually in this movie?
I don't know. I thought it was her father.
It's Grosvenor. I don't know. No, he's never here. And this is where, like, the younger Wemple
falls madly
in love with her by comparing her to the dead mummified princess that he's been peeling back the bandages from. And I'm like, you sick bastard.
This is where it wasn't his words because his words were later, but he was really up in her face. And I was like, I felt creeped out even before he started saying
If this was a weirder movie, he would have licked her eyeballs while she slept. You know it. It was that kind of feeling, right?
And if it was a 1990s movie, that female would have decked his butt.
Yes. But then he, like, starts comparing her lovingly to this 3,000-year-old brittle
mummy
corpse. And I'm like, dude, he's a necrophile.
But they did do her coffin, what is it called?
Sarcophagus.
The sarcophagus, the face part of it,
really nice,
does look like her.
A bit, yeah. Then we have, like, this sudden romance out of nowhere where Wemple and Helen flirt and kiss on the fainting couch, like, suck face. Okay,
and I'm going to put it here. All the way through, this love scenes is exactly what I don't like in half the sci-fi things. Is that it just
romance just comes out of nowhere.
Not feel, it doesn't even have that charm. It feels like two people that are forced to marry each other.
Yes, it felt icky. And Helen was wearing, like, very, very skimpy things on the fainting couch. Do you remember her blouse? It's 1920s flapper, and she's basically undressed on this couch. And it just felt bad, guys. It felt bad. It felt weird.
They didn't come up with the charisma, the karma, or any
charisma.
And what's the word I'm looking for?
Chemistry.
They did not come up with the chemistry of love between them.
So old Wemple and the doctor walk in on young Wemple and Helen sucking face, and immediately Wemple says, "Oh, the mummy's curse will affect his son." All right, well, how? He's kissing Helen, and now I guess he thinks that Helen is cursed. I don't know. Imhotep finds Helen and comes to see her. He's stymied about. He's stunned by who she looks like, because obviously she looks like the reincarnation of this princess. Now he wants to lick her eyeballs too.
There's got to be a lot of scenes that were deleted, because I'm looking at this top cast, and there's two people that are on this that have scenes deleted.
Darlene, those are the scenes that were deleted because they were the other scenes of different lives from the princess. Okay, there's like Saxon warriors and knights. Anyway, the Wemples now know that Imhotep is the mummy. And then we start getting view screen scrying at this point.
In a pool of...
We have some kind of somewhat racist dialogue, but I don't know if it's racist at this time. Like, just calling this black man a Nubian? Like, that's his only name. Is that?
No, he's a Nubian.
No, the Nubian. They always refer to him as the Nubian, like he's a thing. And that's offensive. Like, give him a name, goddammit. And why is he always just dressed in like a weird Egyptian garb when he's having to like wander, like ancient Egyptian garb, I should say, when he's having to wander around and help Imhotep? Like he's having to go out in public and he looks like a freaking Batman henchman from the Pharaoh or whatever. Like, anyway. Let's see here. Elder Wemple gets killed. Helen is under control, and we have this whole like exposition about Imhotep and his quest for eternal life to bring Helen back from the dead, and how he gets mummified alive, etc., etc. How Pharaoh at the time was a complete idiot and basically undermined his own plot. Imhotep orders Helen killed after she kind of starts falling for young Wemple again, and she begs for her life to Isis. Was it Isis?
It was Isis because she was a priestess. The original
She was a priestess of Isis.
And she was not supposed to walk into Anubis's.
But then a statue of Isis actually comes to life, sort of, and presents an ankh towards Imhotep, and it ends up burning the scroll, and Imhotep ages and then turns to dust at the end. So, the end. Like, wait a second.
And it was a weird the end too, because it was like there, and then all of a sudden you had the globe,
the universal globe.
Yes.
See, I'm bitching about this movie. I really want to like it, but it's not up to the quality of even like the weird Frankenstein and Dracula sequels that we've watched.
Whoever did the cut and pasting,
like the editing in this, is weird.
Editing is weird.
And I don't think those deleted scenes would have helped it. I think it might have actually made it drag on longer. Like we said earlier, there's only a couple things that really work in this movie. Boris Karloff is actually properly used in this. He's able to use his presence. He's actually able to act, emote, speak. The costuming is very good. And like most Universal horror films, the sets are good. They're not as good as like Hammer horror.
I think they could have cut out the first expedition.
Darlene, if you cut out the first expedition, you're cutting out about 10 minutes of the movie and you're down to like 63 minutes. And they've already cut out the meaningless kind of flashbacks to other lives, which I agree are probably pointless. They would have looked cool, but they were probably pointless to what we had. This is, again, another half-hour Twilight Zone episode. And I'm shocked to be saying this about a Universal horror movie, especially the first of introducing a monster. I think this actually this is the worst introduction to a Universal monster out of all of them that we've watched. Every one of them's
we haven't watched the
Invisible Man. We haven't watched that yet. But excluding Invisible Man, Frankenstein's better. Dracula's far better than this, and it's the same story. Creature, fantastic, right? The original Creature movie is just top notch, and Wolfman, fantastic. I mean, all those movies are way better than this, and none of them are retellings of Dracula, except Dracula being Dracula.
So, how would you tell a story of a mummy?
Likely through what they do with the later Mummy films for Universal, like the next Mummy film, because the next Mummy films, there's like 6 Mummy films that Universal made back in the 30s and 40s. None of them are the same character as Imhotep. It's all a different mummy. So I would say that likely the next movie we should watch is the second Mummy film to see if it's far better. Maybe not the next movie. We should probably do a 50s or 60s science fiction movie. But I'm saying like the next Universal film that we watch should be this second Mummy film, and just go, okay, here is a new introduction to the Mummy. It's not going to be Boris Karloff. I'm pretty sure Boris Karloff's not in that one. I don't remember. But even if it was Boris Karloff, it's a different character. It's going to be a different introduction to the character. It has to be better than this. Because this is just, like I said, it's boring. It drags. I've just watched The Story with Dracula. Effectively, just watched it. The only thing that makes it stand out is Boris Karloff acting his socks off, and
The sets.
the sets, which are pretty darn good. Are the props good? No, because the scroll looks like garbage. Like,
I do like
the
that.
sarcophagus.
I will
are
say
nice.
they did think a little bit when the guy had burnt the old Wimple dies of a heart attack, quote unquote, because he's
He's being like he has like the mummy is using the dark side on him.
yes, and he doesn't burn the scroll. He was supposed to. And the mummy burns some papers that he had. I like that this Dr. Muller or whatever it is grabs pieces of that.
He goes, "That's not parchment. That's
not
paper." Yeah,
Yeah,
he
'cause you would-
recognized the fact that parchment and paper burn differently.
because it would be not parchment, it would be
Papyrus. And yeah, that was smart. That was smart. I'm down with that.
So there are a few details that they have but most of them are bad.
I don't recommend the movie, and I'm saying that after debating for 2 days now. Well, actually, we technically watched this late last night. It's over 2 days, but less than a day, effectively. I slept on this, and I was like, "Am I going to recommend this movie?" And I feel
you're
bad.
saying yes, and I'm going, yeah. Even after
I was
the
saying
movie,
yes all the way up until we started talking about it for this review. And talking about it for this review has kind of solidified my stance that I'm not recommending it. It's the first Universal monster movie I think I'm really not recommending. And it's not even... It's a light not recommendation because Boris Karloff is such a gem in this. He really is. Is it worth watching just for Boris Karloff? Yeah, maybe, but I still wouldn't recommend it. Like, everybody else is kind of a waste of space. I don't think anybody else really stands out as an actor and actress. The plot is simple. We've seen it in Dracula. You'd think that like the ancient Egyptian stuff should really kind of push forward,
and it doesn't.
It's just kind of there.
And I think if they pushed it forward, maybe started with their love affair first.
Oh yeah, start like the first 15 minutes. And then it goes to modern day and we see like that could have actually been kind of cool. You're right.
And then he's talking to his dad. He could have the second guy, the second Wimple could have been talking to his father going, well, I'd like to go back out there and...
Yeah. There's ways to reframe this exact story in such a way as to make it a little more engaging. Okay? For sure. For sure. Do we need to see the original dig? You're probably right, we don't. We probably don't need to see that. But you need to fill it in with longer scenes in ancient Egypt. Maybe even a mannequin-esque credits sequence where you're showing like Imhotep and the princess missing each other through lives or something like that.
Well, he was stuck, wasn't he? Stuck as...
Up until the first expedition released him. He was stuck in a sarcophagus. But
so he's still in his second life.
He's still in his first life. He's immortal. So why don't you just let him stay out? And he's constantly searching for her and missing her. And do 3 or 4 scenes where it feels like that, but they're very short, like 30-second scenes where you tell a very quick story about him. And so you understand why you get why he's so desperate to be with her again, because you see their love story in the beginning in ancient Egypt. You see his tragedy is suffering through the ages very quickly of him missing his love and his love missing him. Okay. And finally enough time has gone by that even her soul has sort of forgotten him at this point. And that's why he needs to awaken her in some way. And that's where he starts using the dark side or whatever. You know
and
what
it
I'm
would
saying?
also do a neat thing that if these side panels of her life explain why she keeps going back to Cairo.
Yeah. why she keeps ending up going back, or why. Because she's drawn there. Like, she always feels like her heart is in Egypt. Like, there's something about it. I always felt like this connection to this piece of history, and like all throughout her lives. Yeah, that would have been interesting, right? Like, but we don't get any of that. It just, yeah, I don't recommend it. It's a light not recommendation. Like, if I had to say a 1 through 10, this movie's like a 4 out of 10. It's not like aggravatingly bad. There are still very good things in this, and Boris Karloff by himself is worth 2 points.
I'll give it a 4 out of 10.
Like,
I won't give it what
like Internet Movie Database has it as like a 7 out of 10. Is it a competently made movie? Is it well directed? Yeah. Is it it's
I don't think it's
edited.
I don't think it's well edited.
I think it's decent. It's not good. It's okay.
But the story
is completely ugh.
And the acting of most of the characters.
Everybody except Boris Karloff just kind of falls flat.
I mean,
God, I feel so guilty about saying that.
Even the Inatop's and her
Imhotep.
And the princess's love just it's everything is like icky.
Their love is about as believable as Wemple and Helen's love.
Wemple's and Helen's love is far worse.
Yeah. I mean, I just
I
don't care about any of the characters.
At least
I
Karloff gives the eyes of,
dude, Karloff's great.
I'm obsessed with you.
He's able to like bore into your soul with the way that this movie is filmed. Like that one shot that's the close up of his face that gets the Kirk light on his eyes.
I'm talking about how he looked at her.
Oh yeah, like he's drinking her. That's what it felt like. Boris Karloff's
I am obsessed with you is what that look was.
But it wasn't
drinking. It was, I'm obsessed with you.
I would describe it as he was drinking her in with his eyes. That's how I would write it in prose. Like, he seemed... Yeah, I know, but Karloff's a gem. That's all I have to say about it. What are we going to do for our next movie? I don't know. We're going to do something from the 50s or 60s.
We still got Dr. X to do.
Which is another kind of classic. That's
We're
one of the classics.
We're going to have to do the Mummy films and then the...
We also have to do the Invisible
Man's films.
Because these are all important. All these films are important.
We've still got, 3 Frankenstein?
I don't know. I'd have to count. All of these movies are important to science fiction history and to understanding it. And what I'm happy about after watching The Mummy...
We also need to do a Cujo movie.
What?
We need to do another kaiju movie, too.
Kaiju movie, not Cujo. Cujo's a giant dog that eats people.
I'm stumbling over my words.
After watching The Mummy, the one thing I am happy about after watching The Mummy is that it took us this long to kind of find a not good Universal horror film. It took us this long. Like, there's ones that I might say, well, I don't really recommend. I think one of the Dracula ones, I was like, but at least there was more entertaining in all of those than this. And that's shocking to me. Shocking.
Well, let's let them go so they can have a good night.
Okay, so I'm Aaron.
I'm Darlene. Good evening.
Keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.